Good afternoon and happy Friday to folks. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. This is very cool because we are having our town hall, and I know that President Schultz and Provost Chilton would both like to be here with us, but I am glad that they would join us this way. We've had a marathon in the health sciences for Kurt and for Elizabeth, so be kind with them. Because they're wrapping up a couple days of solid meetings with all of our teams. So folks, thanks very much for being here. I want to make a couple quick comments. I've only had opportunity to work with Kurt for 5 years, but he is an amazing leader. I will also tell you that my short time working with Elizabeth Chilton, she is a collaborator, colleague, leader extraordinaire. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to President Schultz.
Great, and I started off and wasn't muted, so that's always a good start to any sort of Zoom meeting. Well, folks, thanks for being here and giving us a little bit of your time on Friday afternoon. If you could put up the first slide, Ginger, that'd be awesome. That way I'm not looking at Daryl. Okay, much better if I can look at my first slide. So thank you. Just as we get started today, I want to express my appreciation to all of our faculty and staff for joining us, for all the work that you're doing in a really difficult and challenging time. I know COVID-19 has affected all of us in different ways. Many of you may have children at home that you're dealing with K through 12 education opportunities that you probably thought you wouldn't have to deal with. Several of you as well may have daycare issues or elderly parents or just a variety of different things that trying to cope with in addition to a pandemic, working from home, not meeting people. It's just a tense time. I sent out an email communication, I think about a week and a half ago, where I really urged us to not just be kind to one another, but also look how we operate, look what types of things that we do. It's been amazing to me. I gave the advice, of course, of not sending emails in the evenings. And a couple times I've had to stop myself from firing off something at 8:30 and 9 o'clock at night and saying, you know, does the recipient really need this right now? And if they get it, are they going to be thinking about this all night? Those are the small kinds of things that I urge us to continue to do and be thoughtful of with our colleagues. So we're going to keep frequent communications moving forward, whether that's letters, social media, communications from Daryl, from the deans, whatever. We're going to try and keep those up. And my goal is, and I say this a little tongue in cheek, is I want people to have to work really hard to be uninformed. We want to make sure that there's lots of ways that you can keep up with what's happening. The other part of this is I'll remind you several times as we go through this today, we're only going to give information out when we believe it's really accurate information, whether that's budget, whether that's around COVID-19 or any other thing. The faculty rumor mill at every place I've worked has always worked overtime. And you add a pandemic to that, people hear stuff all the time. If you hear something that concerns you, ask somebody, let us get you the information or tell you what we can. And that way it'll sort of keep those rumors that can be so difficult down to a minimum. So next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. See, use the magic word. We went 2 slides. So before we meet Elizabeth, we want to just do an acknowledgement of America's first peoples. Washington State University acknowledges that its locations statewide are in the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. The university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude to these original caretakers of the region. As an academic community, we acknowledge a responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with the Native peoples in support of tribal sovereignty and the inclusion of their voices in teaching, research, and programming. We also pledge that these relationships will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. So with that, I'm really pleased to introduce to you all our newest member of our leadership team at WSU, our Provost and Executive Vice President, Elizabeth Chilton. Elizabeth, take it away.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Excellent. So I'm happy to be joining you today for this virtual town hall. And as has been said, I wish that this were in person, but I'm hoping we can do that just as soon as we can do so safely. So I began my position as WSU's Provost and Executive Vice President on July 15th. The next slide, please. I moved from Pullman to Pullman from New York State in June with my son, who's a rising college sophomore, and my husband, who, like myself, is a professor of anthropology, and our two very rowdy dogs that you can see there in the middle playing in the snow. My research specialization is the archaeology of Northeastern North America, particularly Native American history, ecology, and subsistence prior to European colonization. After spending 5 years at Harvard University post-PhD, I then spent 15 years at UMass Amherst as a faculty member, a department chair, center director, and lastly, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement. I then served as Dean of Arts and Sciences at Binghamton University, New York for 3 years before joining the Cougar community this summer. I'm just 8 weeks into my position, and the day-to-day COVID response work takes up much of my time and energy, as I know it does for all of you. But some of the long-term issues I'm excited to be working on over the next 6 months and beyond are, first of all, and productive system-wide partnerships and addressing issues of systemness that I heard about all throughout my job interview, and I continue to work on and talk with the deans and the chancellors and the cabinet and just about anyone who will talk to me. We talk about systemness. So I'm really honestly excited about that piece of this, and that is one of the top reasons why I was really drawn to this opportunity. Second of all, I bring a deep commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Kirk and I will talk in a little bit both about the past work that's been done already at WSU and what I would like to bring to that from the Provost Office perspective. And then finally, promoting and modeling a whole life philosophy for faculty and staff and students. Part of supporting equity and inclusion is being kind to ourselves and one another, especially during these trying times. And this is that President Schultz has really modeled, and I'm really, really want to support that and underscore that in all that I do. So thank you again for attending today's town hall. Over to our discussion.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Of course, I said thank you, Elizabeth, twice because I was muted the first time. One of the things that when we talk about recent university highlights over the last couple of years, it's been very data heavy. We've showed lots of graphs about trends and lots of exciting things to do. But given sort of the Zoomitis that almost all of us are suffering from, this year what we decided to do is just do a few highlights. I squeezed in a single graph here, but what we want to do is really look at faculty achievements and some of the things that you all as our colleagues across WSU have really done over this last year. So with that, next slide, Ginger. So institutionally, completion of our first WSU system 5-year strategic plan. This was a massive effort. Chris Hoyt in my office, who serves as chief of staff, is responsible for our WSU system planning, both putting it together and now the harder part, implementation. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but this has been a really important step for WSU. The launch of a new Center for Research in Emerging Infectious Diseases in Nairobi, Kenya. We've had a very active presence in Kenya over several years. And this center was made possible by a $7.6 million National Institute of Health grant. And it's going to be led by Karuyuki Jenga, who is our newest member of the National Academy of Medicine. And we are excited to launch this particular endeavor and continue on a lot of that standing work done out of the Paul Allen School for Global Animal Health, particularly in Africa. We created a new department of viticulture and enology. And many of you may remember in our last campaign, we built a state-of-the-art Wine Science Center in Richland, Washington on the campus of WSU Tri-Cities. Went to UC Davis, who had the best in the country. We looked at what they did. They were helpful to us and said, if you're going to build, if we were going to do it again, here's what we would do differently. So it's fantastic. But what we didn't have is a specific degree program that was really focused around enology and viticulture. Dean Andre Wright and his team have worked together with Chancellor Sandra Haynes at Tri-Cities. This degree program will be located on our Tri-Cities campus. If we talk about the land grant and working closely with our communities, that's right in the middle of the wine area. And you can imagine as a student, you might be in classes in the morning and you're on a vineyard or in a production facility in the afternoon. That's right close by. It's going to be a great hands-on experience. And we think this is really moving an important part of the Washington agricultural industry forward. And finally, we want to talk about the Transformative Change Initiative. This is really an initiative run out of Elizabeth's office that is focused around student retention. And this is something that we need to continue to work on across all demographics and all racial groups, male and female. And this is a proactive way. It's system-wide across all of our campuses to try and make sure that we're just doing a better job in the classroom and preparing students to make sure that we advance them from starting to graduation. Next slide. Well, one of the things that I'm particularly proud of is our faculty at WSU. And I mean, it's not just in Pullman, but across our entire system. To try and take our faculty achievements and put them on a single slide means that we're going to always leave some things out and some things that should be there. And we'll hit some of those highlights as we talk some of the different types of achievements we see in our colleges and our campuses. But we want to highlight a few really key ones. The first is we have 8 faculty who've been elected to the Washington State Academy of Sciences this last year. Those include Tim Baszler, who's in the Paul Allen School for Global Animal Health, Kelly Brayton in veterinary medicine and microbiology, Laura Greiner Hill, Vice Provost for Faculty Development Affairs and also Professor in Human Development at Connors, Alaire McLean in the Sociology Program and Arts and Sciences, Michael McDonald in the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, Sterling McPherson, also in the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, Katrina Mealy, who's a professor in College Veterinary Medicine, and finally Chin Zhang, who's director of the Center for Precision and Automated Agricultural Systems, also in Connors. And it's great to see 8 of our colleagues that received this honor. I know John Roll and several others here in the health sciences area have been active in the Washington Academy of Sciences, as well as nominating colleagues. And every time I do one of these talks, I want to remind everybody, awards for our colleagues are really important for recognition. Nominate a colleague. We have many deserving folks out there. Make sure that you take that time, work with them to nominate them for something. We also had 3 of our colleagues that were selected as fellows of the American Academy of Nursing. Renee Hosel, Fritz, and Kakab Shoshone will be inducted in late October. There's only 230 people worldwide that were selected for inclusion in the American Academy of Nursing Fellows Program. So congratulations to our colleagues right here in Health Sciences for a great job. Finally, the Stephen Hines from the College of Veterinary Medicine won 4th place in an international competition surrounding innovation in the classroom during COVID-19. This is, I know many of you out there know colleagues or yourselves have been very active about doing things in the classroom under a very different environment than we all thought that we would be in. And I think we're going to see more faculty and staff recognition for ways that they've worked in a creative way with our students during this pandemic. So congratulations to all our colleagues. Let's keep nominating people as we see awards and recognizing the folks that we work with each and every day for the great job that they're doing. Next slide, please. Well, here's the graph that I managed to slip in when nobody was looking. In all seriousness, congratulations to everybody at WSU and our faculty and staff, our colleagues on nearly $370 million in research expenditures. As I like to mention, nobody hands research money to anybody. Folks have to go out there to compete. Our faculty are writing large proposals. They're competing against the very best in the country, and they're winning, and they're being successful. And I think this is a testament. If you look at where we were just 10 or 15 years ago, $400 million is right around the corner. And here on the Spokane Health Sciences campus, 40 million is right around the corner. And it won't be long. I'll be retired, and I'm sure sitting on a beach somewhere where we eclipse $100 million in Spokane. I can see that day coming as we continue to grow faculty and resources to do that. But congratulations to our colleagues, the support structure, graduate students, postdocs, our faculty for the fantastic job that you do in competing for these extramural funds. Next slide, please. Well, we also had intercollegiate athletics, excuse me, serves as the front porch of the university. And we had a really outstanding year this year. And it was certainly culminated by our women's soccer team finishing, making its way to the College Cup, which is the top 4 teams in the country. Interestingly, to show how strong the Pac-12 is, out of the final 4, 3 were Pac-12 teams. Our ladies had to go on the road and win, I think, 3 consecutive away matches, maybe 4, that were all against teams, many of whom had not lost at home at all until the Cougs beat them. And it was just a great, outstanding group of young women that did a great job representing WSU on and off the field. We also had a great year in terms of our academic success of our student athletes. For the 5th straight semester, our student athletes maintained our highest cumulative GPA at 3.17. And then for the first time in school history, all of our athletic teams averaged over a 3.0 GPA in the spring semester of 2020. Pat Chun, our athletic director, has emphasized when he was hired and when he talks to groups that academics is really important, and that you, if you take care of the job in the classroom, you're going to take care of the job on the field. And he's hired coaches that believe that way. And I think we talk about student athletes, it's important to remember that they're working really hard in the classroom as well as competing at an elite level. Finally, in Cougar fundraising this year, we had over $27 million in gifts and pledges towards Cougar athletics. And we've been talking with our budget challenges and intercollegiate athletics over the last several years about needing to really up our game in terms of private fundraising. To give you some idea of this record, it's 27. The previous record was 15 million. We almost doubled it. And so really proud of Pat Chun and his colleagues for the job they're doing, going out and raising dollars for both capital and operating expenses. Next slide. Philanthropy will continue to be a big part of what we do at WSU to help invest in programs and facilities and scholarships and things that we need to be successful as an institution. This last year, we finished with $125 million in philanthropic activity. We were really pleased in the midst of COVID. We were down just a couple percentage points from where we thought we would be. There are some schools I've seen out there that have been down 20 to 30% of where they thought they would be. So I appreciate Cougs and supporters continuing to step up and invest in WSU. Our kind of highlight gift of the year was from Bruce Abinson and Julie Parker. They did our second endowed deanship at WSU in the Murrow College of Communications, and also endowed the athletic directorship in intercollegiate athletics. Also in the philanthropic front, this last year we had $200,000 that were given to help our students in a really significant time of need with COVID-19. We supplemented this with money from several discretionary funds to purchase hotspots and laptops and things like that to make sure that students, faculty, and staff had everything they needed to be successful in a really challenging environment. We're going to continue to go out there. I think we've got some great opportunities under Daryl's leadership as we set a vision for WSU Health to go out there and see additional philanthropic activity here on this campus for these facilities and for our colleges and programs that we have that constitute the health sciences at Washington State University. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. So given our current global pandemic, it is reassuring to know that WSU Health Science Education will ensure that students enter the workforce with the training they need, fully equipped to deal with whatever the future holds. Next slide, please. Now, I've only just begun to get to know the WSU Health Sciences. As Daryl mentioned, we've had a real what would we call it, an immersive learning experience over the last couple of days, or at least for me, it was a learning experience. A great deal, even just an hour ago with the leadership team. So a few of your achievements, which you all know better than I do, but that really just jumped out at me as I was getting to doing my homework ahead of meeting all of you. So first of all, sponsored research is clearly on an upward trajectory, as Kirk mentioned, and spans a wide range of foci, including things like autism, cancer, chronic illness, drug delivery, and sleep and productivity. I think I could really use some help on the last one, maybe the productivity part, but the sleep part, I definitely could use some help on that one. Next slide, please. I am not the only new person to a leadership role here at WSU. We are very pleased to welcome Dean Mary Coythen, College of Nursing, Dean Mark Lead, College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, Gwen Halas, WSU Health Sciences Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, and Scott Maloney, WSU Health Sciences Strategic Alliances Director. So welcome to all of you. I've gotten to work with Mark and Mary so far in our Dean's Council, and I'm really impressed by their leadership and looking forward to working with them. Next slide, please. So just a few other kudos to all of you. First of all, when I was to know about the research and initiatives of the health sciences, I was really interested, or I find it interesting that one of the very first research papers that I undertook as an anthropology undergraduate honors student, a real keener, I undertook research on health disparities for Native American communities, and particularly reproductive health for Native women. From that and about the current state of health disparities is that one of the primary reasons health disparities still persist in American Indian and Alaska Native populations is a shortage of Native physicians and practitioners who are sensitive to cultural values, cultural practices, lifestyles, and spiritual beliefs. So I was really impressed to hear about the efforts in our health sciences in this area, including the Native STEAM Summer Research Institute, which I understand included 26 high school students from 22 different tribes across 6 different states. A summer research opportunity for first-year medical students to enhance their knowledge of Native populations, history, culture, and traditions, etc. And the RISE Pathway Program, which is a 6-week program for American Indian and Alaskan Native participants who are planning to apply to medical school. These are really amazing opportunities, and really glad to hear that we have strength and happy to support moving forward. Next slide. So some of the other recent accomplishments, I understand the Department of Veteran Affairs and Man Grandstaff VA Medical Center will become occupant in WSU's Spokane Teaching Health Center. And this collaboration allows for an additional convenient location for the VA to continue providing quality care to veterans while allowing future healthcare professionals the opportunity to train VA experts. This project is one of only 2 demonstration sites nationally approved by VA Secretary Robert Wilkie to evaluate how academic communities can help to enhance healthcare for veterans. Overall, really impressive, and I'm looking forward to learning more in the months and the years to come. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris.
Thank you. I love the action shot of Daryl, at the end, statically holding that. But congratulations, though, particularly to Daryl and the leadership team here that VA partnership has been required several years worth of really concentrated work, both federally and with our local community and local hospital here. So it's great to see us take that step. And I think we can do a lot more with the VA in Spokane. And it's going to be great to have them in the Spokane Teaching Health Center and to watch that partnership continue to expand and grow over the years. So congratulations on that. It's neat when these things that you work on for a couple of years come to fruition. So our next section, which will be relatively short, is really on fiscal updates. And just a couple quick items here. One, we will continue to share with you fiscal information as we have it. The state legislature will not be meeting in special session, at least that we know of, until probably January when they meet for their regular session. So if that's the case, we just may not know much more about how the state budget is going to affect WSU. You'll still be able to see things like tax revenues coming in, expenses, those kind of things, and projections. But if you say, well, what does that mean for WSU? What does that mean for Washington Public Higher Ed? We're probably not going to know that until the legislature meets and starts making some decisions. So don't get frustrated if you go, well, we're not hearing anything, we don't know. We'll do the best that we can to let you know what those decisions are. The other part of this that I want to mention is that we've gotten questions in a lot of the town halls about furloughs and will there be a furlough program and those types of things. This summer, we were doing some pretty active work on a possible furlough program as we were trying to meet that 15% budget reduction target laid out by the state. And as we developed that, it became clear that staff and career track faculty were going to wind up taking a much larger percentage of some of the reductions than our tenure track faculty. And there were just some serious equity issues around that. So we were able to figure out some other things to do and did not have to do a furlough program system-wide for this academic year. So I'm proud of that. I'm glad we were able to do that. I don't want to ever reduce anybody's salary if we don't absolutely have to. That being said, we've gotten several questions on this. Well, what about for 21 and 22? Like I said earlier, we just don't know. Until we see what comes out of the legislative session, what our budget looks like, and we're going to be fighting hard to have no cuts to higher ed. We'll see what that does, and then we'll make decisions based on that. The one thing I will say about any furlough program, if we do it, all employees have to participate. It's got to be tiered, so people that make more pay more, and there's got to be a certain level at which you say anybody who makes less than this is not going to have to participate. I believe strongly that if we have to do something, that's got to be part of the constraints of it. But right now, we have no intents of needing to do that unless things change dramatically for the worse in the next 6 or 8 months. So with that, let's talk a little bit about where we've been fiscally. Next slide, please, over the last several years. Those of you who've been to these talks before have seen this slide or cumulative versions of it, shall we say. We update it every year. And just as a reminder, what this shows is the green bars represent WSU as a system taking in more money than it's spending. Red bars mean that we were spending more money than we were taking in on those particular years. So if we look back to FY 2013, we brought in $25 million more than we spent. And then FY 2014, we made a series of spending decisions about a variety of projects. The bottom line is we were spending a lot more money than we brought in. That culminated in FY 2017, where we were overspending our budget by $30 million a year. It was not a single thing. A lot of colleges were overspending, athletics. We started lots of new initiatives, had buildings that we had to pay for, lots of stuff that was there. And so when I came around, we talked about we were going to go on a 3-year recovery. And the idea was to decrease that 30 million to 20 million in 2018, 10 million in 2019, and hopefully be back in the black, a balanced budget by fiscal year 2020. Well, thanks to the great work done by our deans, our vice presidents, our chancellors, you all as faculty, we were able to recover much quicker. And if you remember in FY 2018, we cut that deficit down to a little less than $8 million. By last fiscal year, FY 2019, we actually finished with somewhere around 6 or 7 million in the positive. And then this year, FY 20, we were actually about $28 million in the positive. Now, if you come to the president's office and you want to look under my desk and go, where's the 28 million? Man, I got ideas. We got investments we need to make. We got faculty salary issues. We got lots of things that we need to spend the money on. It's not sitting in my office. Where these dollars are is they're distributed out to campuses. They're distributed out to colleges and other academic units that were the generators of those particular dollars. And so one of the reasons that we didn't have to do a furlough program this year is because we allowed units that had built up some revenues to use those dollars to help mitigate those cuts this year. So I just want to take my hat off to everybody. This is if you look at this over since 2013, this is a pretty significant delta in change in the way the university has operated. We've done this by keeping expenses under control and bringing in additional revenue. So well done. One of the key things is to not put ourselves in this position again. And I will say, if we look in 2017, if COVID-19 had hit at that time, and you can imagine the challenges of trying to close a $30 million gap, plus deal with a $40 or $50 million cut from the state. So the fact that we worked so hard to get us where we are just means that we're in a better fiscal position to take some of the challenges that we now see. So I appreciate the continued work on this. We're going to continue to be transparent with our budget. And I know the Spokane campus and health sciences has had a lot of challenges to work on fiscally. And I appreciate Daryl and Dan and the whole team really buckling down, figuring out creative ways to make investments and still continue to move health sciences forward. So great job to you all. Next slide, please. So what do we got coming up over the next year? Strategic planning and initiatives, and we've got a series of different things. Elizabeth and I will talk about some of these in the next few slides. So if you, next slide, please. There we go. So I mentioned that we had our first ever system strategic plan, and we spent a lot of time over 18 months developing the plan, putting it together, engaging faculty and staff at all of our campuses and what this needs to look like. Now comes the hard part. That's the plan implementation. And what is key about this is that you've got to tie in planning with actual decision-making and budget. The old adage says that if you want to see an organization's priorities, follow the money. So what we can't have is a strategic plan here, a bunch of dollars being spent here, and no intersection between those two. If you do this well, our planning efforts and our budget align strategically with that. That allows us to plan ahead, allows us to make strategic investments and great ideas that people have from all of our academic units. It's just a really important part. Now, WSU has not traditionally done this at the system level, and that's going to require a lot of discipline on our part, a lot of communications on our part, and the formulation of a budget model that really allows for us to do strategic initiatives as we need to do that. Elizabeth Chilton will be working with Stacy Pearson to put together an executive budget committee to look at how we can change the overall way we budget at WSU. Now, this is not a 2-week process or 3-week process. What we have today is our budget style is really an amalgamation of special deals and stuff that's happened over 20 years. And you come into WSU new, try and figure this out. It's very difficult sometimes to figure out why things are done the way they are. There was no malintent by anybody. It's just that over time, what happens is what is going to be a 2-year initiative becomes 10, becomes 20, becomes nobody can remember why we did it that way. So this will be a multi-year initiative to rebudget and redistribute and look at creative ways to make sure that we can support existing things, have a clear way that people understand why dollars flow. And we also need to develop investment funds so when we have great ideas, new programs, things like that, that we actually have a place that we can go to ourselves internally and get those resources and dollars. Next slide, please. And I'll turn this back over to Liz.
Okay. So of course, part of the discussion in the system strategic plan and something that as a system we grapple with is enrollment. First of all, I did want to give you an update on our enrollment, since many of you have been asking, especially in light of the pandemic. First of all, this data that I'm showing you here is preliminary and not official data, but it does give you a sense of the trends. So as of right now, our fall enrollment is the third highest in WSU's history. It's down slightly from last year, but less than 2% down from the all-time record. Last fall was our all-time record. We've maintained our ethnic diversity, just over 30% overall for the system, similar to our percentage of first-generation students system-wide. Enrollment at the Pullman campus is down about 1,100 students, total of 19,800. The decline is in part due to a number of freshman deferrals, either to the spring or to next fall. And so we're hoping that ticks as we get through the other side. WSU Health Sciences has had its largest enrollment in at 1,730 students. And probably, as you might expect, Global Campus saw the largest increase, enrolling a little more than 4,000 students. And that's more than a 22% increase this year. In the process of hiring a vice provost for enrollment management in my office, this is going to be a key position that will look at recruitment, work with the registrars, oversee student financial aid, and we've not had a full-time enrollment management professional at WSU for some time, and so this will be a position. We'll be having the finalists in over the next couple of weeks and hope to make an appointment in October. So many of you will hear about opportunities to meet the candidates. Search, we've got a number of finalists that are really stellar, so you will hear more about that. Next slide, please. I think, Kirk, you're going to kick this one off.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is important across the WSU system and is an ongoing set of initiatives, of work that many of you that are listening to this do each and every day. And we appreciate that a great amount. One of the things I want to remind everybody is that while a lot of issues around inclusion and equity certainly have come to light, Black Lives Matter over the summer, that shouldn't represent that we've got to frantically go out and do something that we weren't already working on. And I think that's been a really key thing, is we've got to keep at this, and I want to acknowledge some of that important work. In 2017, we had faculty, staff, students in Pullman that felt that the central administration just was not responding effectively to some of the needs in our community around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what came out of some of that was the formation of 5 working groups. Vice President for Student Affairs, Mary Jo Gonzalez, Associate VP, Jamie Nolan, worked really hard on these 5 working groups, came out with a great set of reports. And it wasn't just the reports, there was a lot of work that was actually done and new things implemented as part of that. Well, the next step is to really take that work and take the work to be done. And we'll appoint our first ever President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Expect to stand that up sometime soon over the next month or so. Elizabeth and I have been meeting with our Black Faculty and Staff Association on a monthly basis. We've had a couple meetings already. And if we look at the number of Black faculty and staff at WSU, system-wide, and certainly in Pullman, the numbers are abysmally small. And one of the things we want to do is come up with creative ways to not just recruit, but retain our Black faculty and staff. And Elizabeth's going to talk about a couple of the initiatives that she's working on in this space. And so we're going to continue to be engaged in those conversations as the semester and this academic year goes on. One of the other things that has come up is we have a lot of policies and procedures and things that we do as a university that we've done for a long time. And we haven't even gone back with an equity lens and said, does this make sense? Is this how we should be operating in today's modern environment? So I just want to express my appreciation to Chancellor Mel Netzhammer of WSU Vancouver, and also to co-chair, I'm blanking right now, help me out, Zoe High Eagle Strong, who's Director of Native American Programs in Pullman, for convening a group of colleagues across the system to really look carefully at the different policies and the ways that we do things. And again, Elizabeth's going to give an example of something that's been a long-term policy that when you look at through an equity lens, you say, this doesn't make sense to be doing it this way anymore. So that's not glorious work, but it's work that needs to be done. And I think it shows a continued commitment by WSU to ensuring that we have a diverse workforce that we bring in and a diverse workforce that we retain to really benefit our students. So with that, I'm going to ask Elizabeth to kind of take over and talk about some of the new initiatives she has going in the Provost's office.
Right. Yes, thank you for that. You know, I don't want to mislead you with the slide to say that there are system-wide efforts and then there's provost area efforts, because I'm very sensitive to the roles and responsibilities. I really pointed out that the provost often has a provost role as well as a sort of vice chair affairs for Pullman. That is sort of an unspoken, unwritten title. That would make my title really long, but I think it's important to say that all of the initiatives I'm going to talk about are system-wide initiatives that really build on the system-wide efforts that Kirk just discussed. So first of all, this fall, WSU will do faculty cluster hire in racism and social inequality in the Americas. And the goal is to seek scholars who will contribute to this area and help lead institutional transformation at WSU. In recent years, academic institutions utilize cluster hires to attract and retain a more diverse faculty, and I have done so at my two previous instances. Cluster hires allow the building of cohorts of scholars who can support and mentor each other, as well as mentor. Aside from recruiting and retaining a more diverse, when paired with an explicit network mentoring program, such cluster hires can transform the institution through the building of new curricula, research foci, and community engagement. So please stay tuned for that, coming to a campus near you very soon. Secondly, in my area, there's been an associate vice provost for inclusive excellence. That position has been vacant since May. I really think they were waiting for the new provost to arrive and really get the lay of the land and figure out exactly what that job description would look like, and really understand what the needs were in inclusive excellence. And so I'm happy to announce that I think it came out on WSU Insider just today, an announcement for an internal search for an associate vice provost for inclusive excellence. And the idea is that this person will lead our diversity and equity efforts in faculty hiring, tenure and promotion, research support, retention, teaching and mentoring, as well as curricular planning. And this person will lead the cluster hire program as well. The AVP will continue to meet with existing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in student affairs, Office of Compliance and Civil Rights, institutional research, HR, all of the 6 physical campuses, actually 5 physical campuses and 1, well, however many campuses we have, all of the campuses and across the system. And then finally, you know, an example of the kinds of policies and procedures that Kirk was mentioning that sometimes it's like a small policy or procedure can either facilitate or impede our diversity efforts. And so one that came to my attention pretty early on that we've addressed is the sabbatical and professional leave policy. Professional leaves are, of course, an important opportunity for our faculty in advancing their scholarship. And in the past, I understand that an unspoken rule was expected to be physically distant from institution during such a leave. And it's clear that making such a condition disadvantages those who have caregiving obligations or economic constraints or other constraints in their personal lives that would make this difficult. And for a lot of us, I personally worked on a book project when I had my sabbatical, and if I had left my home institution, I would never have found a better library with New England archaeology resources. Thus, in the next call for applications, which is going out, I believe, any day now, if it hasn't come out already, applications for sabbaticals will make it very clear that the physical location of a sabbatical will not be a criteria for evaluation of potential effectiveness of the leave. This is something that was brought to our attention by Women in Gender and Sexuality Studies, sent Kirk and I a memo along with a number of faculty and staff. This is just one example of ways that we can support that work-life balance that we were talking about and be kind to one another. So with that, I'll turn it to Kirk.
Great. Next slide, please. Let me just wrap up with this so we have a little bit of time for questions. Many of you have been in this town hall setting have been engaged with the Workday project, and it's a 4.5 year project started in 2016 to really modernize a lot of our finance and HR systems. I just want to remind everybody, we expect to go live on January 1, 2021. There'll be some bumps in the road. There always are on something like this, but we've had a team of professionals working extremely hard over the last several years, not just on the selection of Workday, but more importantly on an effective implementation of Workday. Training is going to be available starting in October. We have 31 different training courses, 100 step-by-step reference guides, over 30 video and self-paced learning experiences. Really important for those of you that will be involved and engaged with anything around Workday to go through that training, and don't do a Kirk as an undergraduate, which would have waited till December 31st to go, man, I better do some training because I got to be ready tomorrow. So let's have lots of opportunities, and I think it's going to be exciting for WSU as we try and make better data-informed decisions moving forward. Workday is going to really help us collect data and information, and I think make better decisions as an institution. So with that, we'll put up the last slide, and I just want to express my appreciation to all of you. Thank you for being with us on a Friday. I want to express my appreciation to Daryl for the job he and his team continue to do leading the WSU Health and WSU Health Sciences. It's exciting to see things come together. That was a vision that Daryl and I talked about several years ago, and it is fun to watch that start to really gel and take place. It's great for WSU, great for our state. So with that, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat room, and we'd love to talk about anything that you would like to.
Kirk, if I could weigh in for you and Provost Chilton, we talk about what keeps us up at night. What gets you up in the morning? So Provost Chilton, you've been here for, wow, 8 weeks. What gets you up in the morning about WSU?
Oh, well, now you're about to find out what a geek I really am. You know, I was in college, I was originally a math major. And what I loved about math was the sort of the problem solving piece of it. Well, of course, in math, you can have a right answer and you can have a wrong answer. And the field I ended up choosing in anthropology doesn't have right answers or wrong answers. But, you know, I do still love those very complex four-dimensional puzzles. You know, being at WSU, whether it's thinking about our system, thinking about coordinating across the state with our response to COVID, working with the chancellors, working with the deans. It's a multi-layer, it's not even a 4-dimensional puzzle. It's a, it's maybe a 16 Rubik's Cube type of thing. And I really enjoy that. I love complex puzzles. I like, the reason I became an archaeologist, I think, is I like working with teams of people who have different kinds of expertise that they bring to the table. You can't do archaeology without also having an osteologist and an ecologist and a geologist. And, you got to have people who have that expertise. That's what I like about academia. And, it's been in the 8 weeks. I mean, I say this in all honesty, it's a great team of colleagues. Everyone I've met really loves this place. They're Cougar through and through. I'm already a Cougar, so.
Daryl, I love the academic environment and the fact that we have so many gifted faculty, staff, and students that have fantastic ideas. And what I get up for is I love going to the legislature. I like sitting down with donors. I like building partnerships and bringing resources to bear to allow our really brilliant people to do what they do so well. And I know a lot of people hate that. That's probably good they're not president, but I think if I can help folks be successful and do the things that they would like to do and they dream about doing, that's what gets me amped up every morning about coming into work and figuring out creative ways to do things. Daryl, great question. I was hoping for something less cerebral this late in the afternoon after 3 of these today, but thank you for all you do. Appreciate our faculty, staff, and students, and look forward to a really awesome academic year under really challenging circumstances. And as always, go Cougs.